Beneath the gleaming facade of academic excellence, a cancerous truth festers: the exploitation of innocence. In a world where knowledge is power, some seek to harness it for their own twisted desires. Nia's tale is a heart-wrenching reminder that the most dangerous monsters wear masks of respectability, and the most devastating betrayals begin with a whispered promise of guidance, trust, and protection. The crisp autumn air swept across the college campus, carrying the whispers of fresh beginnings and unbridled potential. Among the sea of eager faces, Nia Baker stood out, a bright-eyed and ambitious 19-year-old freshman, her smile radiant with anticipation. She had dreamed of this moment for years. And finally, she was here, ready to embark on a journey that would shape her future. She felt an electric thrill coursing through her veins, her heart pounding with excitement. This was where she would discover her true self, where she would unravel the mysteries of her chosen field, and forge unforgettable memories. Nia's gaze drifted toward the imposing structure that housed the psychology department, her destination for the afternoon. She had heard whispers about Professor Jackson's captivating lectures, how his lectures transported students into the depths of the human psyche. His reputation preceded him: a masterful storyteller, a weaver of words, and a guardian of knowledge. As she pushed open the door to the lecture hall, a wave of chatter and laughter enveloped her. Nia's eyes scanned the room, searching for an empty seat. That's when she saw him, Mr. Jackson, standing confidently at the podium, surveying his domain with an air of quiet authority. His eyes locked onto hers, and Nia felt an inexplicable jolt. There was something about his gaze that made her feel seen, heard, and understood. Mr. Jackson's smile, warm and genuine, put her at ease, and she returned it, her apprehensions melting away. "Welcome, students, to the fascinating world of psychology," Mr. Jackson began, his voice low and soothing, like a gentle breeze on a summer's day. "Today, we embark on a journey into the human mind, exploring the complexities, the mysteries, and the triumphs." As he spoke, Nia found herself entranced, her mind drinking in every word. Mr. Jackson's passion was contagious, igniting a fire within her. She felt alive, connected to the subject matter, and drawn to the charismatic lecturer who seemed to hold the keys to unlocking the secrets of the human experience. The lecture hall dissolved into a blur as Nia hung onto Mr. Jackson's every word, her thoughts racing with possibilities. She knew, in that moment, she was exactly where she was meant to be, under the guidance of this remarkable educator, poised on the threshold of a life-changing journey. Little did Nia know, this journey would lead her down a treacherous path, one that would test her resilience, shatter her trust, and forever alter the course of her life. As the semester unfolded, Nia found herself increasingly enthralled by Professor Jackson's lectures. His words wove a spell of fascination, drawing her into the intricate world of psychology. She devoured every concept, every theory, and every case study. But what captivated her most was Professor Jackson himself. His attention, though subtle, was intoxicating. A nod, a smile, or a whispered word of encouragement would send Nia's heart racing. She began to crave these moments, feeling validated and seen. Professor Jackson's praise became her currency, and she strove to accumulate it. At first, it was innocent. Professor Jackson would offer guidance on assignments or provide feedback on her essays. Nia appreciated his willingness to help, and he seemed genuinely invested in her success. She didn't notice the incremental changes in their interactions, the gradual blurring of boundaries. Professor Jackson would invite Nia to his office hours, ostensibly to discuss coursework. But conversations would meander, delving into her personal life, interests, and dreams. He listened attentively, offering words of wisdom and empathy. Nia felt heard, understood, and valued. As the months passed, Nia found herself increasingly isolated from her peers. Professor Jackson's approval became her sole focus. She would skip social events, decline invitations, and spend hours preparing for his classes. Her grades improved, but at a cost. Subtle signs of grooming emerged, like whispers in the shadows. Favoritism crept in, as Professor Jackson often singled Nia out for praise. She felt like a prized student, her confidence swelling with each nod of approval. Nia didn't recognize these red flags. She was ensnared in Professor Jackson's web. One fateful evening, as Nia worked late in the lecture room, Professor Jackson appeared beside her and offered to mentor her even more closely than he already had. Nia's heart skipped a beat. No one had ever offered her such attention, such investment. She felt honored, grateful, and indebted. With that, the dynamic shifted. Professor Jackson's influence deepened, his grip on Nia's psyche tightening. The line between mentorship and manipulation began to blur, casting a shadow over Nia's future. As Nia's dependence on Professor Jackson deepened, he began to manipulate her emotionally, morphing into psychological torment. Physical boundaries blurred, and sexual exploitation crept in like a thief in the night. Professor Jackson's words, once encouraging, turned venomous. He would lash out at Nia's insecurities, exploiting her fears and doubts. Nia's confidence shattered, leaving her vulnerable to his every whim. Physical touch, initially innocuous, became a tool of subjugation. Professor Jackson would brush against her, his hand lingering on her shoulder or arm. Nia's skin crawled, but she felt trapped, unable to escape his grasp. The touches grew bolder, more intimate, until Nia's personal space was consistently breached. Sexual abuse slithered into the shadows, hiding behind closed doors and whispered promises. Nia's world imploded, shame, guilt, and helplessness engulfed her, suffocating her cries for help. She felt dirty, tainted, and unworthy. Her mind reeled, struggling to reconcile the monster before her with the mentor she once admired. As the abuse intensified, Nia's mental health began to fray. Anxiety and depression clawed at her psyche, insomnia haunted her nights, and panic attacks ravaged her days. She withdrew from friends and family, constructing walls to conceal her anguish. Relationships crumbled. Nia's parents grew concerned, sensing the change in their daughter but unable to reach her. Friends tried to reconnect, only to be met with Nia's defensive silence. Her academic performance plummeted, grades slipping as her focus shattered. Professor Jackson monitored Nia's downfall, adjusting his tactics to maintain control. He would offer fleeting moments of affection, only to snatch them away, leaving Nia desperate and dependent. The once promising student was now a shadow, haunting the campus corridors, searching for a way to escape. Years passed, but the abuse continued, hidden behind the mask of mentorship. Nia's cries for help remained muffled, her screams drowned out by the sound of her own heartbeat. As Nia's abuse continued, Professor Jackson's tactics shifted from seduction to coercion. He wielded blackmail, gaslighting, and threats to maintain secrecy and control. Gaslighting became a constant companion. Professor Jackson would deny previous agreements, conversations, or incidents. "You're imagining things, Nia. You're paranoid." He'd feign concern, pretending to care about her mental health. Nia's grip on reality began to slip. She doubted her own perceptions, questioning her sanity. Self-doubt crept in, eroding her confidence. Threats hung over her like a guillotine as the professor continued to tell her that if she told anyone he would ruin her reputation, and he would make sure she doesn't graduate. Nia's withdrawal from social life accelerated. She abandoned clubs, quit her part-time job, and avoided friends. Her support network crumbled, leaving her isolated and vulnerable. Desperation clawed at her soul. Nia felt like she was drowning in quicksand, unable to escape. Hopelessness shrouded her, a constant companion. Her academic performance began to plummet. Nia's focus shattered, her mind reeling from the constant abuse. In this darkest hour, Nia's inner voice whispered a haunting question like, "Will I ever break free?" With this terrible feeling in her heart and mind, suicidal thoughts crept in, whispering sweet release from the agony. Her creativity, once a source of solace, withered away, leaving only despair. She stopped writing, painting, and playing music, the things that once brought her joy. One fateful night, Nia's desperation boiled over. The agony of her existence became too much to bear. In a moment of profound darkness, she made a tragic choice. She killed herself. This she did by swallowing a whole bottle of antibiotics she had gotten from the school clinic weeks before when she was treating an infection. But before she killed herself, she journaled and made sure that she kept the journal in an easy-to-see part of her room. Few hours after Nia made this tragic choice, her roommate, Sarah, was greeted by an eerie silence as she entered their dorm room. "Nia," Sarah called out, her voice trembling. The room was dimly lit, curtains drawn. Sarah approached Nia's bed, and her heart sank. Nia lay motionless, her eyes closed. Sarah's scream pierced the air as she rushed to Nia's side. The room began to spin, and Sarah's vision blurred. The police arrived, and the dorm room transformed into a crime scene. Detectives James and Rodriguez took charge, beginning their investigation. The news of Nia's death sent shockwaves through the campus community. The circumstances surrounding her passing remained shrouded in mystery, but the devastating impact was undeniable. As the investigation continued, the detectives scoured Nia's room and discovered a hidden journal. The entries chronicled Nia's abuse, detailing Professor Jackson's manipulation and exploitation. The detectives' eyes widened as they read the haunting words. The journal became a vital piece of evidence, linking Professor Jackson to Nia's death. Detectives James and Rodriguez summoned Professor Jackson for questioning. They needed to understand his relationship with Nia and the context behind her haunting words. Professor Jackson's expression transformed, conveying concern and empathy. "I had no idea Nia felt this way. She was a troubled student, struggling with personal issues. I tried to help, offering guidance and support. Perhaps my efforts were misinterpreted." The detectives were skeptical, but they couldn't shake off the professor's convincing demeanor. His words seemed laced with genuine concern, and for a moment, they wondered if they had misjudged him. And so they let him go. However, their doubts were short-lived. A hunch led them to revisit Nia's dorm room, searching for any clues that might have been overlooked, specifically her old paintings. Upon arrival, they found Professor Jackson frantically searching through Nia's belongings. His composure crumbled as he tried to explain his presence. He claimed he was looking for something she had borrowed, but his alibi fell apart under scrutiny. The detectives arrested Professor Jackson, and during the interrogation, his facade cracked. He revealed his true intentions: to check Nia's phone for anything incriminating. He had been worried that she might have documented their interactions, exposing him. As the truth unraveled, Professor Jackson's confidence waned. He confessed to having multiple victims, all of whom had been too scared to speak out. But Nia was different. She had documented everything. Professor Jackson's confession unleashed a torrent of testimony from previous victims, emboldened by Nia's courage. His evil secret became public knowledge, his reputation irreparably damaged. Justice would be served, but for Nia, it came too late. Her story, though tragic, ignited a movement. Her memory fueled a collective commitment to protect and empower. In the silence that followed, a haunting question lingered: how many more Nias suffered in silence? The news of Professor Jackson's arrest and confession sent shockwaves through the campus community. Students, faculty, and staff struggled to comprehend the extent of his abuse. Outrage poured forth, with demands for accountability and justice. The university's administration faced intense scrutiny. How could a predator hide in plain sight, exploiting vulnerable students for years? Students shared their own experiences, revealing a culture of silence and fear which made local media outlets investigate the university, exposing a pattern of negligence and cover-ups within the university's administration. As the investigation concluded, Professor Jackson faced a multitude of charges, including multiple counts of sexual abuse and exploitation, manipulation and coercion, abuse of authority, and negligent homicide. In connection with Nia's death, the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts. Professor Jackson received a sentence of 25 years to life for sexual abuse and exploitation, 10 years for manipulation and coercion, 5 years for abuse of authority, and 2 years for negligent homicide. The sentences were to run consecutively, ensuring Professor Jackson would spend a minimum of 42 years behind bars. Upon conviction, Professor Jackson's teaching credentials were revoked, and his name was added to the National Sex Offender Registry. For Nia's family, the loss was catastrophic. Her mother, father, and her siblings were left to navigate a complex sense of emotions, grappling with guilt, helplessness, and the unanswerable question of what if. Among her peers, a mix of emotions emerged. Some felt fortunate to have avoided Professor Jackson's predations. Nia's story would forever serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and action. Rest in peace, Nia. What lessons do you think society can learn from this case? Share your thoughts below. If you found this story compelling, please consider sharing it to spread awareness. Like this video, subscribe to uncover more true crime stories where deception and truth collide. Click here to watch another chilling case in our series.